When I moved into this house, the first thing I did was build this workshop. And as with most renovation projects, the first thing is always demolition. As I was working my way through the demolition, I was taking bits of timber that I thought might be worth something later on. And one of the pieces that I happened to pick up was this piece of, I'm not really sure what it is. I went on to use some of the timber down here to build my dining room table, which I later found out was spotted gum. I'm 99% sure it's a gum based on the color, this deep mahogany. If you know what this is, I would love for you to be able to tell me. But one thing is for sure, this is the densest, heaviest, most solid piece of timber I've ever held. I cut off the section that was usable, which is this piece, and I knew exactly what I was gonna do with it as soon as I'd milled it up. So I got in touch with a mate of mine, a local knife maker here in Townsville. Some of his work is amazing. We bounced a few ideas back and forth. I finally come up with what I want. It's a kitchen knife, but a pretty substantial kitchen knife. I'm heading out to his place tomorrow to see how this knife gets made, or the knife blank gets made. I've seen a billion videos on YouTube, but I've never actually seen it happen in person, so I am super excited. Now the idea with this was that I wanted this to be longer than normal.
Yep.
So is that still gonna work in that?
That's 130, so that's, if I was to grab that now, but like that, so you're still longer than normal anyway.
The first thing we did was transfer the pattern onto the blank and then cut it out. So sit back and enjoy some cinematic, slow motion, sparks flying, grinding action.
Weight loss.
The steel we used for this was 12C27 stainless. So after the blank had been cut, we put it into the forge where it sat for a while at 1080 degrees Celsius. For this knife we used plate quenching, so once the knife was up to a particular temperature, Jake pulled it out and sandwiched it between two plates of steel. Normally you would use aluminium. The idea with this is similar to when you see steel being quenched in cold water to rapidly drop the temperature. The steel plates are doing the same thing. They're absorbing the heat out of the steel really quickly. We also took a shop vac and switched it around so it was blowing out, again helping to drop the temperature. But according to Jake, as long as it dropped below a certain temperature within a minute or two, if I remember correctly, it should work perfect.
Then how do you not end up with...
Yeah, that's hard.
So just doing nothing on the...
Yeah, so you can hear it. We take unhardened steel. Hear it? Get that dull,
Yeah. Ah, yeah, it's more high
that
pitched. Yeah.
glassy sound.
After that, it was put in the oven for 2 hours and then the primary bevel was ground in. That was as far as we got on that day, but Jake carried on working, and then a week later, he dropped this off. This is the knife, and then the 3 pins that are gonna go through the handle. The blade's been sanded up to 600 grit, so it's about a satin finish at this stage, and the bolster has been highly polished, so that's got quite a gloss on it. The bolster was attached with 2 pins that were peened and then ground down. So this is a mechanical join, there's no glue involved. So the knife blank is all done. I can set this aside for now. The next step is gonna be the wood for the handle. I've milled this up on 4 sides, so the next step is to run it through the bandsaw and cut this down the middle. It's the next day, the epoxy is dried, it's out of the clamps, and the next step is for me to drill through the tang and come out the other side of the wood for the pins. Now, one of the biggest problems with this step is as you come through the timber, there's a good chance that the fibers are going to blow out, and that doesn't look very good. So I have a way around that. What I'm going to do is grab a drill bit the same size as the hole through the tang. In this case, it's 8mm, and it's also a brad point bit. That's really important. I'm going to put that in the drill press and make a small hole through the tang into the wood. That's going to leave a center hole. I can then switch over to something like a 3 or 4mm drill bit and use that center hole that's just been created to go through the timber. Where that small hole comes through the timber on the other side, I can then use that as a pilot hole, so then I can flip the entire knife over. I can switch back to the 8mm brad point bit. Again, you want to use a brad point bit here so you can cut through the fibers cleanly. I'll put a piece of masking tape over just as some added insurance, and then come back through the timber with that brad point bit through the timber and then through the tang. Once the epoxy had dried on the first side of the handle, I could then follow the same steps again to do the second side of the handle. The next day, once the epoxy had dried on the pins, I could start work on shaping the handle.